For more on this story, we can go across to France 24's Gulliver Cragg, standing by in Kiev for us. Gulliver, is there a feeling of relief where you are?
Well, certainly, yes. There's a feeling of cautious relief, though it's worth noting that a lot of people thought all along that this Russian troop build-up was more likely to be just bluff. Polls showed that less than half of Ukrainians thought that there would be an invasion, despite what some commentators, particularly in Washington, D.C., were predicting. On the other hand, commentators are noting that Russia will still be keeping a very large military contingent in occupied Crimea, and that some of its forces that are moving away from the Ukrainian border aren't going to be moving that far away, because they are going to be near Voronezh, where Russia has a big base in western Russia, which is only a couple of 100 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky wrote on Twitter that he welcomed this de-escalation. At the same time, though, as the Ukrainian army were reporting a slightly more active night on the front line in Donbass than the previous three, they say that one Ukrainian soldier was killed and that there were several attacks, which they describe as ceasefire violations, coming from the opposite side. The general feeling is that had Ukraine responded to any of these attacks over the last few weeks in a way that could have been construed as disproportionate, or had they ended up killing any civilians, then that could easily have been used as a pretext by the Russian-controlled forces to launch some kind of larger-scale attack on Ukraine, and that it may well have been cool heads on the Ukrainian side of the front line that made sure that that didn't happen. The Ukrainians stuck to their policy of the minimum amount of self-defense that was needed. But as President Zelensky said, the risk has probably not yet gone away entirely. Ukraine remains vigilant. Those were his words.
And Gulliver, who is being seen as the victor here? Is it Ukraine or Russia, or both sides claiming victory?
Well, if Vladimir Putin was hoping to put pressure on Ukraine to change its positions in any way, that doesn't seem to have worked. Ukraine still does not want to hold elections in the occupied parts of Donbass until Russia hands back control of the border. And of course, Ukraine is still refusing to speak directly to the so-called leaders of the two breakaway republics there. Both Vladimir Putin himself and those so-called leaders renewed their request for Volodymyr Zelensky to meet with them. We're not expecting him to meet that request because Ukraine sees those leaders as completely illegitimate and basically as pure puppets of Russia. But what Russia may have been hoping to achieve more with all of this show of force was to send a message to the West. And there we can see that Ukraine's request for more help from the West, in particular a NATO membership action plan and perhaps the prospect of joining the European Union, none of that went anywhere. Russia perhaps thinks that this kind of show of force is helping to deter Western leaders from reconsidering their positions on that and maybe being more welcoming to Ukraine. And Russia may also have been wanting to put Western leaders off joining Ukraine's initiative to bring Crimea back to the top of the international agenda. There's going to be a summit on that in Kiev on the 23rd of August, and Ukraine is hoping that numerous foreign leaders will attend. It remains to be seen whether or not they will.
We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for that, Gulliver. Gulliver Cragg reporting there.